You don't think I should bring them up
You
again
can
just to
if you
remind
want. You
myself?
can if you want. Look, it's shooting it raw. It's basically, it's a bit,
Okay, don't be too raw. Okay, it's not recording yet, is it?
of course.
Oh no, Ran, please don't record yet. Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw. Let's move on to the next photo because I can see the thumbnail and it's a the thumbnail. When I talk about the thumbnail, it's literally about 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. So I don't really know what's coming up, but I can just see the hints of a woman with blonde hair speaking to a microphone.
Okay, that's APEC days, the
Let's do
Asia
it.
Pacific Economic Cooperation.
Ah, here we go. What is this photo?
Okay, that was me sitting there at the APEC table in 2014 when I was involved with the Policy Partnership on Food Security, PPFS.
What is APEC?
So APEC is basically the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. It's a intertrade body, policy making body that had, I think there are about 24 countries a part of APEC. So everybody that borders the Asia Pacific region, so
Okay.
from Russia to China to Hong Kong to US, so
Mm-hmm.
any country that borders the Pacific,
Mm-hmm.
and basically coming together to improve trade
Right.
policy.
Okay.
And I was involved. They had a private sector initiative. It's all governments, right? APEC is all usually
Sure.
governments. But they had one private sector initiative called the Policy Partnership on Food Security. I think it was one of three private sector initiatives happening, and this one was particularly focused on food. And because Pacific Andes is a very large seafood producer, very few of the scale like Pacific Andes you would find in Hong Kong. So they got asked if they would be like, if they want to be a part of this. And that's how Hong Kong, well, at least I got involved from the Hong Kong side, because Hong Kong being an APEC participant, wanted three companies, and Pacific Andes was one of them. And the CEO, who was obviously the first person to get involved, and he saw how passionate I was about all of these, policy change and moving things generally in the right direction, that he suggested I continue engaging. So that's how I got involved with APEC. And I was there for about 2 years, going to meetings. And then eventually I was asked to chair one of the working groups on sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I love the interface between government, private sector, but I just love the conversations you have
Mm-hmm.
and the discussions you have.
I need to get just pause. I just need to stick my head out the door. Get out, you cat! Get out, you cat! I know you're a troublemaker.
Are
I
you talking
know.
to the kitty
Go say
cat?
hi. Go say hi. Hi, Jacqui. This is Pebbles. She's crazy.
Hi, Pebbles.
Okay, let's go back to back to APEC.
APEC.
So in this photograph, the room looks like. So describe the room. Like it. Are you seated at a sort of massive table? Like how many people? Like what was that event?
Okay. So no, that's a good question because the APEC, and I suppose you don't know until you're actually at the meetings themselves, but it kind of represents almost what you can imagine happens at United Nations meetings, where you have different countries sitting behind
Right.
their country name. It's exactly the same at APEC. You've basically got all the countries alphabetically written out around the table, so it's kind of an elongated long table, and then you have the representatives behind that country. So I was sitting behind Hong Kong, and there were a few of us there, a couple from the private sector, and that's basically how it looked. I was sitting next to Indonesia because I obviously comes after H. I had the Australians to my right and the Indonesians to my left. And it was really, really, really cool. I just found that I engaged effortlessly and easily
Mm-hmm.
with policy type people. Maybe I engage easily with most types of people, which is why I landed in the business space because I can speak their language.
Right. Right.
But I found one opportunity I had to do quite a lot of diplomacy because I was chairing one of the working groups. Um, one thing I'd asked for the country states to send through were projects at the time, projects showing best practice in the region. And yeah, countries were starting to submit ideas and projects, and there was at one point where I got a phone call saying, okay, we might have to take those 2 projects off.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to be incredibly diplomatic
Sure.
to the country that had presented it to me, to say for the reason for why we're going to be delaying putting that through. It just taught me there's a lot of diplomacy involved in
Yeah,
these types
sure.
of discussions, and one has to move slowly as well. Maybe I've got almost too much of an idealist vision. I think we can all get there sooner than later, but actually things do take time. APEC made me realize things do take time.
Right.
And you can't rush things. That's for sure.
Okay. I'm not putting you on the spot at all, and but one of the things that I understand is like, so on the one hand, you have this notion, for example, of a conservation notion, right? Like, so let's just say the government says, okay, no more shark fin at banquets in Chinese banquets or whatever, and they say by 2 years or whatever. So explain to somebody who doesn't know why things are what's seemingly so slow. So, for example, the excellent movie that came out this past year, Seaspiracy. How?
Yes, I don't know. Would I say it's excellent? I think some of the facts were questionable, but excellent, yes, in terms of raising awareness more broadly amongst
Right.
consumers.
So
Excellent in that respect,
yeah.
100%.
So the question though, so it's just that I understand that on the one hand, people really attach themselves to the result or the end of, oh, we have to change, we have to fix, we have to do something dramatic, and yet, as your experience has shown, things do take time. Can you explain to somebody who hasn't been in these massive rooms with you, who doesn't understand the complexity of it, why do these things actually take, like, how complex is complex that these things do move forward so slowly? And if this isn't a
Well,
good
I think
question, if this isn't a good question and you want to answer the smarter question, you raise the smarter question and answer that one. I'm a terrible interviewer.
no, it's a good question. It is a good question. Why some countries are moving quicker than others on policy? Let's put it that way. And I think it's very much a reflection of the consumer base. So where the consumers are.
Okay.
And so, for example, and also the activism. Let's put it that way, the activism on the ground also helps to push things in a certain direction. So for example, Europe, I would say, is far ahead in terms of sustainable seafood sourcing policies, etc., amongst the retailers and amongst the private sector.
Okay.
The US as well, very much so, and obviously, Australia. These are countries where NGOs have been incredibly active for a number of years. They've been campaigning, they've been bringing issues to the fore in a big, big way, and exposing companies. Greenpeace climbing on top of certain company roofs and dropping banners,
Yeah.
linking their sourcing to tuna fleets or horrible bycatch rates or whatever it might be. That has all had an impact. That has definitely had an impact. The private sector has listened in a big way, and they're now partnering and working with a lot of these NGOs to make improvements in their seafood sourcing. At the same time, you've got a lot more consumer education perhaps happening on the grounds in those countries, where people are becoming more aware through seafood guides, rating guides, etc., about what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat. So that level of awareness is high. And then you come to certain countries, maybe like Hong Kong. Yes, that level of awareness is getting there. There's a lot more awareness now in Hong Kong than there was, say, 10 years ago. Organizations like WWF have been very active for a number of years. They've got their own seafood guide. Even, shark fin research still consumption rates are far too high
Mm-hmm.
among the general population, but people are becoming more aware about conservation in general. And it's just a matter of time, while we need almost reach a tipping point where that can then start transitioning to influence
Okay.
government policy. But the NGO world, I would say, in Asia is just not as strong.
Okay.
We haven't seen that level of activism. So I think it's two things. It's consumer demand plus it's a strong civil society. We haven't seen that strength in civil society on the ground in places like Hong Kong, for example, to really have significant shifts in private sector policies and government policy. So that's how you can move faster or slower. And I think civil society is a very big indication of that.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Thank you. That was great. That was great. Because I think for a lot of people, on the outside, trying to hang their thoughts or try to really get their heads around it, it just seems so either because it's complex, people want it to be cut and dry or something. So there is definitely that sort of inner tension that I think once you have somebody like yourself who's actually inside, who's really facing the complexities and facing the challenges, and really kind of getting granular in terms of what's actually happening and what's really needed and what really needs to change. I mean, I think that's invaluable, right? And because I said that's invaluable, I think I just created the perfect segue to the next photo, because I think it dovetails really nicely into another project that you care about. And do you know which photo I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting